The Houston Rockets have signed Dorian Finney-Smith and Clint Capela back to the Rockets. We back. I don't know how we got Clint, but we got Clint back. And I'm excited to talk about this episode because it was an eventful free agency for the Houston Rockets on the first day. So Will and I are about to dive into that right now. So stay tuned for this episode of the Bradeaux and Will Show. You're not going to want to miss it. All right, and welcome back to the episode of the Bradeaux and Will Show. Today's a very special episode because we are following up day one of NBA free agency, coming to you guys with a podcast to kind of recap and talk about what the Rockets did do yesterday in terms of free agency. The big fish, we can kind of just jump right into it. They made a couple moves yesterday. The biggest one being Dorian Finney-Smith, maybe bought late because yesterday was Monday, so bought late Sunday night. I started kind of getting the text that like, okay, it's probably going to be DFS. So I started doing my research on it. I like the deal. I know that we personally wanted to bring in a bit more of guard personnel, and obviously to spoil what happens, like they go on to bring back Clint Capela, and then re-sign all the vets from last year except for Jock Landale. So for the most part, the roster is probably close to being done. There might be one more move here, but may not be nothing too major coming next. So they don't probably be bringing too much more guard help outside of Fred, Amin, and Reed. And I did say that was one of the areas I did kind of want to upgrade, was bring in someone who can be another guard for us. That being said, the way I started looking at it with this DFS signing, because you're getting the prototypical 3-and-D wing, like the kind of guy that all 30 teams in the NBA covet for a good reason. Dorian Finney-Smith is that kind of guy. He shot 41% from three last year on 5 attempts per game. If you go to NBA.com and look at the amount of catch and shoot threes he made, he took 5 of them a game, made 41% of them, pretty much the same exact percent that he shot from three on the season. So you're bringing in a guy who shoots an elite clip from three, who's also extremely versatile defensively. He's not necessarily the same level of a point attack defender as like Amin or Tari. Those guys are like best in the league at that. But he is someone who's not a slouch on the point of attack end, and then he's also really good at being a rim protector for his position and for his role. And then, of course, he's very tough. He's very physical. He's going to buy in very well to Ime Udoka's system. He's gonna be in a situation now for the first time in his career period where he's not the best defender on his team. As a matter of fact, on the right day, this dude might be like number 4, number 5. You know what I'm saying? Like we have that many, we have that much depth in the wing department on the. Okay, Trey Man went back to the orange. We don't care about that. But yeah, on the right day, he's like the 4th or 5th best defender on your team. And so for the first time in his career, he's like I said, he's not the best defender no more. So I think his defense is gonna be better because he's no longer being asked to cover for everybody. The Lakers last season, he was their only guy, right? Like defensively on the perimeter. That was it. It was just him. So he was being asked to do everything for them. So much so they had him playing center at different points in time. He's in a situation now where he's not have to do all that. He just has to go out there and guard the guy in front of him, make his catch and shoot threes. You look at the on-off numbers for Dorian Finney-Smith for the Lakers last season. They were hovering around a 500 team before they traded for him. It was after they traded for Dorian Finney-Smith that they started going on that run. And then you remember they took second seat for us for like a week, and then we took it back. And I forgot where they finished. But bottom line is they were the way they were able to escape being that 500 team was post Dorian Finney-Smith. Like I said, the on-offs. All back how impactful this guy was for that team last year. Like I said, he's coming to a Rockets team where he's going to be able to kind of translate some of that impact as well. Like I said, he's not necessarily a guard, but he does do one of the biggest things that I wanted, which was I wanted to bring in somebody else who could potentially start on this team, but put us in a position where KD is not asked to guard. That was one of my biggest things. I do not want KD to guard next year. I want him to be able to just be weak side and then put all of his energy into scoring and staying healthy. Dorian Finney-Smith is the kind of guy that helps you do that, right? He can go out there, and I think the big thing I kept talking about was like the Jalen Williams and the Jalen Browns of the world, got the secondary guys next to the primary options. You know, mix and get the primary, who can get the secondary guys? Dorian Finney-Smith can guard those guys. And then on top of that, he's not going to hurt our spacing. In fact, he's the best shooter on the team statistically, I guess, outside of Kevin Durant at this point in time. So you're bringing someone who else to knock down threes. I think it's a good signing. You probably weren't going to find too many guards out there for that price point that were going to impact the team better than what DFS does. And then I kind of jump into a little bit more with the Clint Capela things and why I think that not having a guard is the end of the world. But I like the signing. I think it's a really good signing.
Yeah, I mean, when I first heard the DFS was an option, I said, okay, yeah, the Rockets do need a guard. As Will mentioned, the Rockets were looking at Luke Kennard and Nikhil Alexander-Walker, both who would have been solid options, good shooters. I mean, Nook and Na, I don't want to say that full name again, but Na for sure, really good defender. So he would have been a great fit. But yeah, obviously those weren't the guys the Rockets went to first. They went for DFS. And I like it as well. This Rockets team is wing heavy. I didn't know what to call it on Twitter. I called it Wing City. But they have so many 6'7" to 6'11" guys that can just guard, and they're very lengthy. 7-foot wingspans. And Dorian Finney-Smith fits right into an Ime Udoka led offense, and he's one of the best non-bigs in the league at defending the rim. People on offense, they shot 7% less than their expected average when Dorian Finney-Smith was contesting the shot. That was top 7 in the league. Amin Thompson was 3rd in that stat, and KD was like 8th in that stat. So now the Rockets picked up 2 guys in the top 10 who can play really good defense at the rim, alongside Alperen Sengun, Steven Adams. The Rockets, they had their strength. It was defense, rebounding, and I'll get into as Will mentioned, I'll get into more with the Clint Capela thing. But they really tripled down on their strengths in defense and rebounding in this free agency. So yeah, Dorian Finney-Smith, as Will mentioned, though, 41.1% from 3, 5 attempts a night. So boom, second best shooter on the team right away. Very solid volume. KD's coming in at 43% last year. So obviously, yeah, he's the guy. But you want to really fix your weaknesses from the season before, and that was 3-point shooting. I've said it time and time again. That game 7, they hit like 6 threes. Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think they hit like 6 threes in game 7, and in 2025, that's unacceptable. So I'm happy they went out and got some shooters. Again, 3-and-D is perfect for this team. It's perfect for Ime Udoka. They used that MLE money to get Dorian Finney-Smith, and it looks like as of right now, they're ducking the first apron. So they did really good in that department. I got to give big ups to Rafael Stone. He has aced this offseason. Like all the things that he's done, he got Steve-O for the cheap deal. He got Fred VanVleet back on a cheap deal, 2 years, $50 million. You got Udoka, who's extended. I can go down the list. Jabari, we can talk about that later. He got signed 5 years, 122. All that to enable them to use that full MLE to bring in a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith, take him away from the Lakers. And that's a big loss for the Lakers. He was very impactful towards the end of the season, as Will mentioned, too. He's playing heavy minutes for them in the playoffs. So, boom, like the Rockets are just deep. This is one of the deepest teams I've seen. And I'm just very excited because, you trade for a guy like KD, and usually it's like, damn, we traded for a superstar. We lost our depth. No, the Rockets added depth in this offseason, even while trading for Kevin Durant. So Dorian Finney-Smith, I know a lot of people were skeptical at first, like, yeah, we need a guard. And yes, the Rockets do need a guard. Right now it's men, Reed, Shepard, and Fred. And even some people don't want to call men and wing cool, but those are your primary ball handlers at the moment. So yeah, I do think that they'll need a guard eventually. But yeah, no, this is a great sign. He's a great fit, that being Dorian Finney-Smith. But
I feel comfortable before we pivot to the Capela signing to I guess share this information. I was also told that that Capela had reached out shortly after we traded for Kevin Durant, expressing interest and wanted to come to the team, and I think that's kind of what started the negotiations of coming to Houston. I said that to say Ime Udoka and Kevin Durant are bringing guys to Houston. Like people want to be here. People want to play for Ime. People want to play with Kevin Durant. We saw Dorian Finney-Smith leave a pretty solid opportunity over there in Los Angeles. A lot of people also don't know that DFS and Luka Doncic are like best friends. Like those 2 guys are like really, really close. I believe I think DFS came into the league maybe like a year or 2 before Luka did, but they were teammates in Dallas. Obviously, they were reunited last year in LA. So he left Luka Doncic, that LA market to come to Houston. And I don't think that could just be like thrown to the wayside. Like, no, he wanted to play for KD. He wanted to play with Ime, different stuff like that. So, like, I think that kind of shows you what we're dealing with here. And I'm gonna be right. I kind of don't think that it's gonna stop at just DFS. Like, I think this is the type of thing that you look down the line, you can say guys want to come to Houston to play with KD, to play for Ime. So yeah, I'm gonna throw that out there. You want anything else about DFS before we move on to Clint?
Yeah, I was just on that same note. That's why it's so important to have a really good coach who has great player relationships. Guys have they've been saying this for a while. Like everyone respects Ime Udoka. And it really starts to show when guys start pulling up to the city. It started with KD, as you mentioned, in DFS, Clint Capela, and it's not going away. So it's great to have that coach, and that was really what really kickstarted the Rockets' rebuild was when they hired Ime Udoka. So that was the best thing they could have done was get him that coach. So yeah, it's only up from here. But we can definitely dive into Clint Capela. I'll start by saying this. Will, I didn't. We both tweeted some question marks. I said, "Is this real?" Will said, "Huh?" So definitely confused in the moment when we got Clint Capela, but the confusion quickly went away when I realized Jock Landale, one, is not coming back. That was known. Two, Steven Adams is not playing every single game, and he's definitely probably sitting back to back still. Three, Clint Capela is a very, very, very good rebounder. Good friend of the show, J-Dub pointed out. Per 100 possessions, Clint Capela was right there with the best of the best at getting offensive rebounds. And that's the Rockets' strength. They were dominating on the boards towards the end of the season. That's why they went double big. And you can look with Jock Landale. The Rockets weren't really running double big with Jock Landale. They didn't feel like they could. With Clint Capela, you definitely can run that double big. Again, I know Clint's a former Rocket, but to remind you guys, 6'10", 7'5" wingspan, very lengthy defender. And he's actually the first, I guess he's the first lob threat we could play in a very, very, very long time. I won't count N'Faly Dante, but he can get up there too. But he wasn't playing for the Rockets. I see Will shaking his head. I agree. But Clint, yes, I am so happy to have him back. Not the best. He's not the same Clint Capela that left Houston, but he's still a very serviceable big, and he's going to be able to make an impact, especially around all these lengthy defenders. So he's a great fit, especially for $7 million. I'm sure it could be a tradable contract as well, if that becomes an option at the trade deadline or in future years. But yeah, I mean, added depth is very important. I'm talking about this Rockets team, how many wins they can get in the regular season. And I was factoring in like, okay, Steve-O sits some games that might hurt us. Boom, you got Capela now in those situations, So it's just really important to grab depth and to get a familiar face as well, Clint Capela, who, as Will mentioned, wanted to come to the city after the KD trade. So yeah, I'm very happy about that move. It was unexpected. Will, I'd like to hear about your reaction when you saw it at first. But yeah, definitely happy to have Clint back.
Yeah, the first reaction because people in playback just started spamming Clint, and I was like, "What? Like what? What happened with Clint?" And then they said we got Clint. So my first reaction was a little bit like, because I was still somewhat holding out hope that they would find a way to like buy low on like a Luke Kennard kind of guy. Which I mean, we know he went on to get $11 million from Atlanta, so that was never going to happen. But I was so hard on hope for something like that to happen. So when we got Clint, I'm like, that's weird because I figured we would just roll our rotation, our center rotation of just Şengün and Steven Adams, who were obviously very impactful for us last year. I could probably argue too, Steven Adams was the top 5 Rocket last year, especially come playoff time. And then like the double big lineup, that's something we discovered mid-season, and obviously I think it saved our season, unironically. So I didn't kind of envision them bringing in any more help on the big side of things. I thought we could have used maybe some help on the guard side of things now. But the way I look at it and my overall outlook on the team is like Brad said, number one, that is Steven Adams insurance, or even to a lesser degree, like God forbid Şengün gets hurt or gets into foul trouble, something like that. Like if somebody one of our bigs go down with injury or foul trouble, you have a playable body. You're just not out of luck, right? Like you're just not, all right, well, we're gonna go out there and like play Jeff Green at the 5 because we don't have any other options there. Like you have a playable body at the 5. I think what else I look at it is at the trade deadline, if the Rockets are like, okay, some things have to change and we need to make some moves, you have tradable salary now, which is one of the more difficult things to do right now. Is having a salary that you're not attached to that you can trade, because you don't want to trade, your young pieces. You don't want to trade Fred and KD and Steven Adams. So you need salary to trade to go out there and get guys. And trading guys like Capela and his $7 million years contract salary could be the start to going out there and acquiring whatever you get to acquire at the deadline, whether that actually is a guard or maybe you want to double down on something else. Maybe there's an avenue where a player is disgruntled, wants to come to Houston, and like that $7 million is the difference when you acquiring him, not acquiring him. So he just gives you flexibility on that end. And then just in terms of what he brings to the team, like Brad said, he still brings rebounding. He still brings back shot blocking. He's not the same player the Rockets traded away 5 years ago. He's lost a lot of athleticism. And quite honestly, I think he's a bad player if he's your starter. I think if he was like starting for this team or even being relied upon on a night to night basis, I think you probably say he's probably not that good for that job. But for a third string job, where his job will be to come in and play spot minutes and to be an injury replacement, I think he can be really good at that role. And then a lot of just what ends up helping teams win the ring in the end is, can you stay healthy? And if you can't stay healthy, who's the next man up? And if Clint Capela is your next man up, I feel pretty decently about that one. So I understand the signing. Um, just the outlook of the team as a whole, they opted to not put a band-aid solution on the offense, right? Like it's Kevin Durant, Reed Shepard, Fred VanVleet, and Amin Thompson in terms of like these offensive guys on our team. Not too many of those. Like Reed's is a rookie. Fred is limited in his own right. Amin, we live a lot of him, but he still has a developing handle. Really can't shoot. And so like it's still very much like a work in progress offensively. The Rockets opted to not try to look like for a band-aid solution to the offense and just said we're going to quadruple down on what we are good at. Like we're not going to look to go out there and put some I don't know. People want to Trey Man. I'll throw Trey Man. He just got resigned. I'll throw Trey Man. Like people, we're not gonna throw Trey Man into the mix because he's probably not that good compared to the other guys. We'll just quadruple down on what we're good at. What are we good at? We're an elite rebounding team. We're an elite defensive team, and we were the most physical team in the league last year. Everybody we brought in, DFS, Capella, these guys are still like DFS, great defender, still super physical. Capella, great rebounder, super physical, right? We're bringing back physical defenders, people who can go out there and rebound the basketball, different stuff like that. We're just making sure that what we're good at, we are the best in the league at. Like you're not going to be better. You're not going to out rebound us next year. You're not going to, on a night to night basis, we're going to ask Kevin Durant to bring us home from a scoring perspective, but you're not going to score at all. And I thought that's a pretty smart strategy as opposed to, like I said, trying to, if you could go out there and get a real guard upgrade, you should do it. But if your options were, like I said, like Trey Mann, like I think this is probably the right way to go about doing it. And so I'll let my plan here. Last thing I'll say just on that is I'm at the point now because the Rockets do not have any shooting guards in this roster. Like it's just Fred. Amin's pretty much a full-time guard now. And then Reed Shepard off the bench, who y'all know I'm pretty high on. But that's it for the guards on this roster. I mean, maybe the occasional spot minutes of like Aaron Holiday right here and there. Like I think he's a serviceable third string guard. We'll talk about that in a second. But like your main guard rotation is Fred, Amin, and Reed. I think the NBA right now is trending away from one-dimensional scoring guards, right? You see Jordan Clarkson didn't have a market. He had to get bought out. Colin Sexton, I like Colin Sexton. He did not go for anything. Like matter of fact, they had to trade an asset with him, which is crazy to me because I don't understand how his value was that low. But that's where it was. They had to trade a second round pick to get off of Colin Sexton. The Malik Monk, there's been rumors that he doesn't have as big of a market as you think he does, right? A lot of those one-dimensional like scoring guards, like THJ just went for a vet men. Like I think the league is kind of telling you with the trades, like Zach LaVine, for example. I think he's probably the highest in this archetype you can be without being a star. He averaged like 25 or 24, 4-4, something like that on like elite efficiency,
Yeah.
and was only able to be moved for a first round pick back. Like all they did was get their own pick back. They weren't able to exchange like a real haul for him. The league is kind of moving away from those kind of guys. And my take on, I tweeted it out today, is just like I was kind of feeling this way a little bit before the trades, and I kind of feel that way for sure now. It's just like if your shooting guard isn't a star, so if you're not Anthony Edwards, if you're not Donovan Mitchell, if you're not Devin Booker or somebody of that mold, and you do not defend or play make at a above average to like borderline elite level, you're probably not that good. Like the reality of the situation is you're probably not impacting winning basketball to that degree because the volume score just isn't that valued right now. And obviously, like I wanted Derek White. I think that's someone who could play the shooting guard for us because he is a great defender. He is someone who does play make it at a decent level, right? He does do a lot of the little things that you would need to be impactful. But obviously, that wasn't an option for us. If my options, like I said, were to try to band-aid it with somebody else out there or just triple down on what I'm good at, I think I'd rather triple down on what I'm good at because some of these other options out there probably aren't that impactful for the Rockets anyway. So I'll just let my plan there.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say on that note too is, yeah, we're putting a lot of pressure on, of course, Fred, as has been the case when he was in Houston. Amin's gonna get those more. He's gonna get more on ball reps, especially with Jalen being gone. He's gonna take that role and having those more reps. And then Reece Shepard, he's got a big opportunity to step up. He needs to step up actually at this point. And I have faith in him. I've been saying this one night. We've had a lot of stock in Reed Shepard. We've had Vanessa Richardson on the show. We talked about Reed and keeping that stock. Yeah, I think Reed, fits. And I know he's a small guard, but he is very gritty. He coming out of Kentucky as well. He had a high analytical, percentages, or steal percentage and block percentage. Very handsy. Kind of a Fred smaller guard type. So I want to see him really lean into that next year, and it's going to be able to help this Rockets team. He's going to be the only guy out there that's going to be 6'7" or shorter. Everyone out there is giants compared to Reed and Fred. They're all 6'7" and up. So it's going to help for sure. They're going to hunt, Fred and Reed, but them being, physical guards, it should help them in that aspect. But Reed's definitely got to prove in that area, and I want to see him do that. But yeah, I'd like to see him take a leap, and if he does, one, it's going to be very scary for the league if Reed is taking a leap, because I think they're honestly fine without a Reed Shepard leap. But I need him to really tap into, you're the third pick in the draft. And you should be the best shooter out there. I know you got KD already, but I really want to see him be an elite shooter next year. Because that's what he was drafted to do. That's what the numbers look like coming out of Kentucky. It should just translate. Like I saw the confidence at the end of the year. I know he has that in him. So yeah, he's got a huge opportunity to step up. And that's what I really want to see, especially with us being very low on guards. And then Amin Thompson, natural improvement from younger guys in the NBA is typically bound to happen, right? Amin Thompson, a guy who has one of the best work ethics in the league, again, like he doesn't have to play up anymore. And I really like that. Amin was a guy who's able to adjust. He's playing on the block, the short corner. He's catching lobs. He doesn't do that anymore. He's on ball. That's his strength. That's what he was doing at OTE growing up. He's a guard at heart. He just had to develop his handles a little more. And I want to see how that's looking, come October 6th. I know that's first game of preseason. But especially for the season, I think Amin could really be different this upcoming year. And him taking a little leap, again, he was 16, 9, 5, 1.5 at the start of last year. If he takes a little leap again, bro, it's done. It's done. So I really am excited to see what this looks like. They're leading heavy on these top 4 picks that they got, Amin and Reed. So I want to see them step up, especially now. But yeah, last thing we can talk about on this show.
I actually did want to double down on one thing I said because I know I was forgetting some names with the shooting guard conversation. Jordan Poole also got traded last week, and it was for a lot of nothing. Mm-hmm. Anthony Simons got traded last week for a lot of nothing. And these are guys who were 19, 20, 21 point per game guys on solid efficiency that NBA front office is just for whatever reason do not value right now. But I'm not even for whatever reason. I think it's because they're low impact, right? If your only real addition to a team is volume scoring and you're not defending or playmaking or like a star level volume scorer. And to be fair, like Devin Booker is a star level volume scorer, but he's also a great playmaker, right? Donovan Mitchell is also solid on that end as well. Like what I'm saying, like Andy Edwards is a good defender. So like they're not just, even the stars aren't just one dimensional. Like you kind of have to be a bit of both. And so, yeah, like I said, I think it says a lot that the NBA is kind of moving away from these kinds of guys. And so if this is like the best case scenario for the Rockets is to get like one of these guys, I'm cool with just saying like we'll forego trying to figure that out. Let's just double down on what we're actually good at. So, yeah, that is what I wanted to say.
And I'll say this. Well, before I say, why are you smiling? What's going on? What happened to this?
I hate to do this bit podcast, but you remember Buddy on Charlotte's Twitter, who I did not like for saying our team was a mess?
Handles, yeah. What did he say?
He just quote tweeted the tweet of the Hornets signing Mason Plumlee. He was like, "This team is a mess."
Also, it's full circle. It's full circle.
I'm crying. I'm so sorry.
This Hornets guy last year said the Rockets team was a mess when we posted the Rockets depth chart. And yeah, now he's a Hornets fan, by the way. So
yeah, oh man,
that is full circle for sure. I was gonna say,
that's so funny, my fault.
No, you good. That was so funny. I actually forgot what I was gonna say. I was gonna mention.
We can go to
Actually, no, I know what I was gonna say. I was gonna say because you said the Rockets are tripling down on what they're good at, and in them doing that, it kind of leaves Cam Whitmore. It doesn't kind of leave. It leaves Cam Whitmore as the odd man out in Houston. You know, the Rockets are, you know, Kelly Eco reported today, they're still looking for a new home for Cam via trade. And, you know, Cam is a guy, again, extremely talented. But, you know, he wasn't seeing the floor for Ime Udoka last year. And with all the additions the Rockets made in the wing department, again, Ime Udoka is not necessarily in a position where he wants to, you know, mold someone into the kind of player that he wants. You know, you kind of got to be ready at this point in time. You know, Reed, he wasn't getting minutes last year for a reason either. You got to get to that point. So again, like if Reed's not there next year, then boom, Aaron Holiday. But to the point being, yeah, we got DFS, we got Bari, Tari, we got all these wings in Houston, and Cam is the odd man out. And at the end of the day, I understand it. I know a lot of people love Cam Whitmore. And again, I think he can still have a very bright future, but I'm not necessarily confused about this move. It makes sense in my personal opinion. I look at the Rockets wing room, and they all have a ton of similarities. Again, lengthy defender, 7-foot wingspan, and they know their role. They're 3 and D. You know what I'm saying? Cam is just not that. He does not know his role quite yet, and he's still not 21. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, he's extremely young. It makes sense that he's not fully developed as a basketball player, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, he could be a very solid player in the future, just not for this current Rockets team who is trying to win a chip this season, as the moves that they've made this offseason show. So we'll see what they do. I personally wanted to move Cam if they move Cam for a star. Looks like they were able to move Cam without doing so. In fact, they tried to move him to Phoenix, but Phoenix preferred the 5 second-round picks instead of Cam Whitmore. But again, we'll see what happens. It doesn't look like Cam will be in Houston next year. I do wish him the best of luck. But yeah, I mean, the Rockets, again, triple down on their identity. You know, long, lengthy defenders at the wing position, know their role, know what they're doing when they come in there. And again, Cam, just, you know, young guy who just is not quite there yet. But I mean, that's the way I personally saw it.
Y'all know I've had a real love-hate relationship with Cam Whitmore. I've been pretty open about why I don't think he was playing, and that's why it didn't surprise me that he did not play as much as I think people wanted him to. Honestly, it kind of confuses me that people don't know why he doesn't play as much as he does. He struggled with ball movement. He struggled with team basketball. He struggled with buying into a role. He struggled with his off-ball defense. And when you're on a team that's trying to win games, you kind of have to be able to do some of those things. And he struggled with all of them. I want to remind people that this is someone who had the lowest assist percentage in the entire NBA, bar none, which is
Was it?
like,
That was last year too, both years?
and I
Rookie
want
and sophomore?
you said what?
It was rookie and sophomore year he had the lowest?
I don't know if it was his sophomore year. I know it was low sophomore year, but I know rookie year he had the lowest one in the league.
I'll look it
And
up. Good.
and I want y'all to understand like how crazy that is. That is crazy. So when you're on a team like Ime Udoka, that like the one of the first things he said when he came to Houston was preaching ball movement and secondary assists. That was like one of the first things he said in his his press conference after being hired. Cam struggles at that.
Yeah.
We all know Ime Udoka is a defensive-minded head coach. If you don't play defense, you're not, giving effort at all times, you're not going to play. Cam struggles with that as well. And then like it's the feel for the game, some of the IQ concerns. It just never shocked me that he was the odd man out of the rotation on a team that's trying to win. And it like y'all know I've been saying for a while now. I thought he played his last game as a Rocket already, and that got confirmed today that it is his last. That's his last game as a Rocket, and I mean it is what it is. I mean obviously you would have loved for him to pan out in Houston. We were all very excited when we drafted him, but like it became very apparent to me very quickly that his time in Houston probably was not going to be that long. He probably needs to go to a team like the Nets, like the Wizards, like the Bulls, a team that is going into next season with no expectations. And honestly, I feel like the Wizards actually is probably the best spot for him because they have the right mix of veteran leaders that will not allow him to go out there and just chuck up some BS, but they're also in a situation where they're not expecting to be competitive. So Cam Whitmore can go out there and have those growing pains mid game. But yeah, he needs to go somewhere like that. I think sending him to a contender, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to a situation where a team wants a guy to be a bit more ready to play impact, role player hoops, and that's just not where he's at right now. So Like I said, it doesn't really surprise me that he's on the block. I kind of figured he was going to get traded. Quite like I said, probably last year. I kind of thought that his time in Houston was not going to be that long, and so it has somewhat officially come to an end. And like I said, it is what it is. I'm not really tripping on it.
Yeah.
I think I'll say this, and I'll land it. I think the people who were acting like this is going to be some sort of big loss. He didn't even play for us last year, and we won 52 games. So like it's I don't know, man. You lost your 13th, man. It's not that big of a deal to me. Um, so I don't know. You ready to? Did you want to look it up, and then if not, we can move to.
Yeah, I was actually looking at it right now. I was actually surprised to see Jabari was actually like bottom 10 in that stuff. He was below 5%.
I'll
But
say
yeah,
another thing he struggles with, but we don't got to talk about Jabari right now.
yeah, we're not talking about Jabari. But yeah, Cam was like 9%, was much higher than his rookie year. But yeah, again, just didn't personally fit what the Rockets had going. It's cool. Best of luck to Cam. I think he can be a hella solid player. But what else did you want to dive into, Will? We got the Jabari extension.
Yeah, we can talk about Bari being extended, and I did want to circle to the vets coming back. The
Okay.
Bari extension, because I don't really have much thoughts on that. I think that's like the definition of
It's a good
yeah,
deal.
yeah, just good deal. Like I don't think it's a great one. I don't think it's a bad one. He's making about $24.5 million a year over the next 5 years. I believe every year is fully guaranteed. I don't know if they have released the specifics of like the excuse me of the percent each year. I'm like fingers crossed, praying to God it's front loaded. Like that would I love front loaded contracts. So I think for this type of contract, front loading it would just be like amazing, especially considering like as of right now, there are also a lot of guys on rookie scale contracts. So front loading it would help us take advantage of the fact this roster about to get expensive really, really quickly. Um, but yeah, like I think $24.4 million is about the exact number that I would have been comfortable giving Jabari at the end of the season. And I'm glad he was able to take that and he was comfortable with it. We can lock that down now. I think that's the type of money that if he grows into the kind of player that we think he can be, we're gonna look back at that contract and say, no, it's like it's a pretty good deal for a guy of that caliber. And like I say all the time, like sometimes you don't need your picks to always be Jason Tatum's and Paolo Banchero's. Like if you walk out of a draft with just a guy who can start on a contender, I think you could say you won at that pick, and that's what Jabari is projecting to be. So, like I said, I don't love it, don't hate it. I think it's just right, and like I said, I'm glad that we were able to get that done. Now, I think Tari's extension is like going to be shortly after this one, and also I think the matter of fact, I think the biggest thing of the Jabari extension is it kind of does set the market for what Tari's going to get because Tari's not going to touch what Jabari got because of his injury concerns. One of them was pick 17, one of them was pick 3, different stuff like that. So I think Tari Easton's contract might be in like the 17 to like 22-ish range, somewhere in that ballpark, which any number in that range is amazing to me. I'm a lot higher on Tari, honestly. So keeping him here for even cheaper is amazing to me. So yeah, I'll end it there.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for Rafael Stone to go out there and fleece a third overall pick. But again, good value deal for Jabari. I like that they locked him in long term at 5 years. I wanted to see him on this Rockets team. I thought he was extremely valuable for the Houston in the playoffs. I think his skill set is extremely valuable in the rebounding department as a weak side help defender. I like all the things that he brings for the Houston Rockets, and especially he's now locked in for the time being. Again, 5 years. That'll be past the time Kevin Durant is here. I'd still like to see him come back into that, 4 spot by the time Kevin Durant is gone. And I like that he's going to be able to work with KD. They had an offseason video last year. They were working out together. So I like to see that's going to be extremely consistent going forward for the foreseeable future. But yeah, I think that's a very good value deal for Jabari. Again, like for the skill set he brings, this is extremely valuable. He has been below league average from 3, as was mentioned in the last podcast. I do expect that to increase. He has to increase that percentage. He did really well towards the end of the year coming off the bench, over 38% from 3 in that time in 21 games. But yeah, I'd like to see him shoot at least 38 minimum from 3. That should definitely increase. Because at heart, I still believe the brother could be a 40% 3-point shooter. But he just turned 22. We'll see. But again, most importantly, 6'11", 7'1" wingspan, and he's playing defense, and he's going to help this Rockets team a lot. Big part of what Ime Udoka does is Jabari Smith Jr. So very happy to get him back, and for the best that we got back, I'll lead us into that conversation. Bringing back Jeff Green, very good vet. The only champion alongside Fred that we brought to this roster originally. Everyone respects Uncle Jeff. Will and I got a chance to meet Uncle Jeff. Great guy. I'm happy that he's back in Houston, and I love that he's playing with Kevin Durant. Again, they started in Seattle, which is absurd to say. They started in Seattle, now they're ending their careers in Houston. So again, love bringing him back. Love bringing back Jayshawn Tate. Will and I, we all call him Team Cap. It's the guy who's been on the Rockets team. He's playing with James Harden. He's playing with James Harden and Christian Wood. He was on that Rockets team, and he's still hanging around. So I love having him on the Houston Rockets roster. Big part of the Stay Ready crew. Shout out to Craig and Ryan and Vanessa. They coined that term. That man can be subbed in at any moment of the game, and he's going to bring it 125%. And that's what I love about Jayshawn Tate. I couldn't tell you he's going to play 10 games next year, but I bet you if he plays 8, he's going to bring it all in those 8 games. So love getting him back on like a 3-year, $3 million a year. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, he's making $3 million.
Yeah, $3 million a year. And then Aaron Holiday, Will say he's going to dive into that, so I'll parlay to Will after the Aaron Holiday. But yeah, again, this is a guy who, when Reed Shepherd wasn't Reed Shepherd, Aaron Holiday came in and he was a really good vet for the Rockets. This year, again, we aren't very heavy on guards, and Aaron Holiday is at his worst when he's trying to do too much as a guard. So I'm hoping that's not the case this upcoming year, because I do think he's really solid when he plays within his role and he's not forced to do something he's not supposed to be out there doing. But yeah, of course, really good shooter, over 40%. And I just think he's a solid vet to have as well. So I'm happy they got him back. But yeah, you can go ahead, Will.
I think one of the biggest things is that Rafael Stone has expressed a lot of, or he's bought himself a lot of good faith with the guys that he has on the team, right? Going back to his first year in Houston, one of the things I think people don't realize matters, but it does matter, is when he took over and he inherited that roster that had to get blown up. Remember, he sent a lot of those guys to the destinations that they wanted to go to. He guaranteed a lot of their contracts before they were able to, so they were able to get paid before they got waived. Right, and like DeMarcus Cousins, his contract had like a deadline, and Stone made sure he waited till that deadline before he let DeMarcus Cousins go, so DeMarcus Cousins could get paid. And like every year Stone has been here, he's made moves like that where he takes care of the guys on his team, even if it somewhat to some degree puts the Rockets to the deficit. You look at the situation where the Rockets tried to bring in Brook Lopez in 2023, so they went and made a bunch of salary dump moves, and then Brook Lopez went back on his word. And at that point in time, Stone very well could have been like, all right, well, they went back on their word, we'll go back on our word, but he didn't do it. He still went through what he said he was going to do. And I think stuff like that actually matters, and we're seeing the dividends of that, right now. It is just Aaron Holiday, Jeff Green, and Jayshawn Tate, but like I said, I think this matters. These are guys who sign for vet minimum deals, even though if I'm Jayshawn Tate, I think I'm worth a bit more than a vet then. Like I think I could have went somewhere else, got a bit more than $3 million a year. If I'm Aaron Holiday, same thing. Like I don't think he's necessarily, this some sort of super duper, veteran player who's going to play on every team. But there's probably a team out there that would have gave him a bit more than we would have, and definitely would have gave him more minutes than we would have next season. But they both opted to come back on vet minimum deals. And I think a huge reason for that is because of how the Rockets took care of them last year, right? When we did give Aaron Holiday money that he probably didn't, what I'm saying? We gave him, I think it was like around $5 million. And yeah, he probably wasn't worth $5 million last year. Even like to a lesser degree, like Fred VanVleet, right? We were able to pay Fred VanVleet so much in 2023, 24, and then 2024, 2025. I think that's part of the reason why Fred was comfortable leaving so much money on the table when it came to his extension, because he already got paid, and like I think those are things that Stone does in terms of his, building relationships with agents that is just completely different from how the Rockets operated with Daryl Morey, where Morey treated guys like assets. Like it didn't matter who you were, what your name was, like you were just an asset to him. And Stone treats you like a person. So I think that definitely, I think that matters. And then just in terms of bringing back Aaron Holiday, Jeff Green, and Jayshawn Tate, I think these are all three guys who are the definition of stay ready, so you don't have to get ready. I think at any given point in time, you could plug one of those three guys on the court. I think they'd be really make an impact, right? Jeff Green is somebody who, for some odd reason, as Father Time is like slowed him down about enough to where he can't impact the game. This guy was still one of our most impactful guys last season in his limited minutes. Aaron Holiday, I think, is like the definition of a third string point guard. I think he's the kind of guy you want, where if Reed Shepherd is not ready for as much minutes as we hope he is, or if, God forbid, somebody goes down with injury, you could feel comfortable giving Aaron Holiday some of those minutes. He's a guy who can go out there, play a little bit of point guard, combo guard for you, shoot threes, play a level of defense. Like I think he's kind of the prototypical third string guard on a good team. And then I love Jason Tate. I think that Tate, like I said, I think there's a team out there like the Nuggets or even the Celtics right now, Sixers. There's a team out there that is um, depth deficient that would love to have a guy like Jason Tate on their bench, and he opted to stay. And I think that I think Jason Tate still has game. I think he can still play. He's very high IQ. He can't shoot, but he makes the right decision with the basketball. He's able to get to that spin move going left every single time. He's the definition of a hard-nosed grit defender. He doesn't care how tall you are, what position you play. He'll go out there and guard you. Different stuff like that. Like I love Jason Tate. I think he's the kind of guy, like I said, who can play on the right team. And so, like I said, if somebody goes down with an injury, we need some depth. Maybe one of the days where Kevin Durant load manages, we'll see them kind of throw Jason Tate into some of those spot minutes there. And like I said, I just love if those guys are your 13th through 15th man. I think that says a lot about how deep your team is. So kudos to Stone for getting those deals on it, and we appreciate those guys for coming along back. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I want to ask you a quick question where you don't have to go too deep into it. Well, one, I wanted to say you made a great point, with Rafael Stone making those, friendly deals with players and keeping good relations. All that is extremely important, player relationships. And it goes back to what I was saying about Ime Udoka again. Players love him. And having that combination with a coach and a GM who players respect and love. And again, it just builds what the Houston Rockets have right now, what we're seeing in this offseason. They're building a very good team. Off the strength of just player relationships, and people want to come to the city off the fact that, hey, I love this coach. Hey, this GM is, I like how he, conducts his business. So I thought that was an excellent point that you made. And I wanted to ask you a quick question, and then we could jump off the show because this question could go for a long time. But starting wise, we talked about last week. We didn't necessarily want to see. Well, I won't say you were kind of saying, okay, like we'll see what happens with Jabari as a starter. We don't want him guarding like the Jamie Williamses of the world. You'd see a scenario where Dorian Finney-Smith is actually slotted in at the 3, because I could see that being a scenario, even though I think they do start, Jabari, they have a ton of length there. But in a scenario where I think Bari could really thrive off the bench and actually get some buckets, maybe even in the post at times. Probably won't get that in the starting lineup with the Rockets. But you think they could maybe switch that up on us? I know right now it's all expected that Jabari will start.
I'd imagine they probably go into training camp with it, and then just the best man wins the job. Funny, but I think it's like I don't think we're kind of assuming that it's just Bari.
Yeah,
I don't know. People are kind of discounting Tari. Tari was ahead of Bari in the depth chart come playoff time. And then when Tari did start, the Rockets were. I mean, you probably know the stat. What were we when
last 13?
Yeah, like you know what I'm saying. So like we're a really good team when Tari started. So I wouldn't just completely like dismiss the world where he starts. I think they go in a training camp and the best man wins the job. And it also wouldn't shock me if that's DFS. I think people discount what he does. 41% shooter who is very versatile. That's kind of what you want next to Kevin Durant in that starting lineup. So I don't know what they're going to do, but like I said, I imagine it's a training camp kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd love Bari starting. I'd also love having 2 40% three-point shooters just thrown into the starting lineup. And that sounds really good as well. But a really good problem to have for the Houston Rockets. Obviously, we're now extremely excited. We'll dive more into Rockets basketball very soon. If you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, comment what you think about the acquisitions. And, of course, Will and I will be back with another episode of the Bradeaux and Will Show. Thank you again for tuning in for this episode.